Hey guys, this is Luis from MX Tech. A very common issue we face from our customers and even some tuners is how to properly set the preload on the Raven and Blackjack cartridge kits. More often than not, suspensions come in with a wild preload setting that is in no way beneficial for the rider. The goal of this video is to show you how to properly set the preload on a cartridge kit of any fork. We want to give you a tool to allow you to set the preload right, no matter the system in hand. But before we are able to run, we must first be able to walk. And with this I mean that unfortunately there has been a widespread amount of misinformation regarding springs in the dirt bike community. There's the idea that you can have spring rates for different types of riding and experience levels. This is far from true. Although we are used to seeing bikes on the stand with the suspensions fully extended, every damping system is designed from the ground up to have a certain amount of travel to compress and to extend, curiously named sag. That's why sag is so important, and you see pro athletes argue about sag to the millimeter. It allows the damping system to do its job properly and in harmony with the rest of the bike. So, the only spring rate you have to consider for your suspensions are the ones that will support the weight of the bike where the suspensions are installed and the rider's weight. Nothing else. Now that we have that out of the way, let's understand how to set the right preload.
The cartridge kit will always adapt itself to the outer inner tube assembly it is being fitted, through simpler or more elaborate adapters depending on the brands. If you are doing this with our Raven or Blackjack kits, make sure the circlip is in the middle position on the cartridge.
Whether it's our kits or any other, you always have to make sure that the cartridge plus spring have a minimum of preload to avoid having the spring loose inside the forks, also known as negative preload. This may happen due to the different length springs available on the market. Some are shorter, some are longer, so we have to check.
To confirm this, we lay the cartridge flat with the spring and check if the surface of the damping rod that will be flush with the bottom of the fork is inside or outside the spring. If the damping rod is outside the spring, we have to place spacers to make sure the spring will have some preload once we fasten the damping rod to the fork lug. In this case, we'll use enough spacers to exceed the minimum of 35 mm. If by chance the spring surpasses the damping rod, you can skip this last step. With the fork on a vise and with the outer tube bottomed out, insert the spacers, if needed, the spring and cartridge without compressing the spring.
To truly find the preload we're setting, we have to use two reference points that we know won't change between one another and that we can easily measure. So we'll go for the top surface of the outer tube and the cartridge surface that sits against the outer tube.
Without any preload, we have 324 mm. Now fasten the cartridge to the bottom of the fork and measure the same two reference points. We end up with 316 mm.
The difference between the two measurements we took is the preload of the spring.
With our cartridges, it's unbelievably easy to adjust the preload because we simply have to change the position of the spring perch circlip. We'll place the circlip lower for more preload and higher for less preload.
We recommend a minimum of 4 mm of preload for any of our cartridges. And depending on the type of riding, we recommend between 6 mm and 12 mm of preload. Around 6 mm for off-road and 12 mm for motocross and supercross. And the fair follow-up question would be, why different levels of preload for different kinds of riding?
Well, in off-road, the preload can simply be anything near the minimum required and perhaps only a bit more depending if you prefer forks that sit slightly higher on the stroke or with less sag.
For motocross and supercross, it is actually pretty important to set it up with a bit more preload.
If we think about it, the weight the springs are supporting actually varies throughout a lap because of the G's generated in jumps, landings and banked corners.
So, to mitigate those weight fluctuations, we set it up with a bit more preload to make sure that we'll always have the right amount of suspension travel for the damping system to do its job. It's a compromise in essence. That's it! As simple as that. I hope you found our video clear, informative and enlightening. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them on the comments below or visit mxtech.com. Thank you for watching.